Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. So, I'm finally doing it. I'm actually doing breakdown videos of my draft decks from the pre-release. These particular two, I actually kept them sleeved up just to make sure I didn't mess it up. Other ones I did actually unsleeve and sleeve, or I had to unsleeve after sleeving them because I reused the sleeves for all weekend. Otherwise, I would have gone through a lot of sleeves this weekend. But these particular two, I decided to keep together because I had to. I forget if I mentioned in one of my previous videos or not. I actually had to essentially build two. I had to build two decks by myself for the two-headed giant event. So initially in my head, I was thinking it will be a little bit easier for myself to do that, but I did not take into account that when you're playing with a partner, you have another pair of hands that's able to essentially open packs and sort the cards. So that actually took a little bit more time. And as easy as one deck was to build over the other, I had a lot of time that I had to spend essentially sorting out the cards, deciding which way I wanted to go. And so actually did take me a little bit more time than I anticipated. And with that being the case, at least I did finish the two decks. In the end, I went 3-1. I'm sorry, I went 2-2. I potentially could have gone 3-1, but went to turns, and instead of losing the packs, I decided to just give it to my opponents. And then looking at the next couple cards, we actually did mutually agree. It's like, hey, I technically could have won this, but because I'd done so many events and because just the experience alone was a lot of fun for me, I did not mind conceding to my opponent. I mean, it was just a blast. Even my opponents were like, this was the most fun game that they played all weekend, and it was the two of them against me and my two decks. It was a blast. I mean, regardless the experience itself, it was definitely something I would not want to do again if I don't have to. But essentially, there was an odd number of players, and instead of just having one person sit out and not be able to play during the event, I'm like, you know what? I'll build my own deck and I'll be my own team by myself. And everyone else that was in the event was totally okay with it. It just did take me a little bit more time, and even some of my opponents were like, some of them like thought they had the advantage because they're going to be two against one, and then others were like, "Oh, it's the judge. We're probably going to lose because he did it all by himself." Blah blah blah. Regardless, I mean, overall, it was just a blast. It was an experience. It was a lot of fun, and just going to break down the two decks. This particular deck is just gross by itself. If I had this seal pull in an event, I'm pretty sure I would have gone undefeated just because of how consistent and how disgusting it is. This other one is a lot of fun. By itself is not that strong, but because it was supported by this one, it was actually quite a complimentary two decks to run with. It was a lot of fun, so let's go ahead and get into it. So let's just go ahead and sort out the bottom half. These are all the lands. And then this particular one, I decided to go Abzan, just because I like to splash for a little bit of flavor and a little bit of power. And so here we go. This is a basic 1/1. It's not the strongest card. I know between this one and then the green rabbit fungus, I think it's a rabbit fungus. I prefer the rabbit fungus, but this actually worked with this particular deck. You'll see in just a moment. The botanical brawler, with all the backup cards and the sheer number of cards that just put +1/+1 counters on things repeatedly, this particular card got really gross really fast, and is one of the reasons why I decided to splash white, just because it just got insane really quickly. The Portent Tracker, fun fact, in when you're playing two-headed giant, it says untap target land, so you can actually untap your partner's land, which was I was able to actually ramp into my turn. There's a turn 5, a 5 mana value creature in this deck that I was able to play turn 4 because I had this out, which was an amazing play. Even my opponents were like, yeah, that's BS. So there's that. Got ourselves a Streetwise Negotiator. This particular card was just a decent backup creature to run, and the fact that it's essentially a 2 mana 2/2, depending on how you look at it. And then we got ourselves our Cosmic Hunger, a decent bite spell, I guess is what they call them technically, whenever the creature just deals its damage to target permanent. And the fact this can also hit creatures, planeswalkers, or battles is actually really, really strong, I feel. And then we got ourselves an Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. I'm sure if you guys haven't read this card yet, this card is insane. It's a hardened scales that can activate itself, that if you happen to have duplicate, you can cycle, and guess what? there's a duplicate. So yeah, just having two of these, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to go the +1/+1 synergies. This deck was it was super easy, and then backup is a +1/+1 strategy, and there's a handful of other cards that actually ran in this particular deck that made me like, and then the botanical warrior or brawler, I'm sorry, just all kinds of insane things. The skittering surveyor, an amazing limited all-star, I personally feel, just because if you want to splash for that third, fourth, or fifth color, having a skittering surveyor just makes it very easy to do in comparison to not having it. Icarus Shade is just a solid 3 mana 2/3. I feel, especially with the fact that it gets +1/+1 counters at the beginning of the end step, regardless to where the creatures died. Worked with the +1/+1 counter synergy here. Completed Huntsmaster is an amazing 3 mana 2/3 that essentially with the effects that I'm building off of, I mean, it allows me to, after combat, decide to, oh, I'm going to pitch this, oh, perfect example, this piddly little 1/1. I'm going to pitch that to make a 3/3 with the Ozolith on the board. It would be actually a 4/4, and then after I can flip it and then just keep repeating it essentially, and then having two of them definitely makes things a lot easier. I mean, it's just a solid 3 mana 2/3 that just makes big dudes, so you can turn all your little guys into just massive monsters. Overgrown Pest is a decent ramp. Is it the best? Not really, because there's Skittering Surveyor in the set. But if you don't have that, you can definitely run the Pest, and the Pest actually is still pretty solid. The fact that you can get a double face card, some double face cards are really strong. So also another thing that you can just upgrade with the completed Huntsmaster. Got ourselves the 2/1 Death Touch for 3. The effect that has backup and allows you to essentially, give something else Death Touch until end of turn is pretty strong. Another one of those +1/+1 counter synergies. It's another Hardened Scales essentially on its own body, and it's a mana ramper. So just having this and the Ozolith out gives this two +1/+1 counters. Yeah, you use the Ozolith's ability to give it a +1/+1 counter, essentially effectively giving it 3, generating 4 mana whenever you tap it. It's insane. Having them all together is pretty strong. This particular instant bite spell, the fact that you're able to pump two things and kill two things for 3 mana is insane. The number of times I would essentially 3-for-1 an opponent is just absurd. If you ever get these, I'm glad this is uncommon, because this thing is just super strong. The Phyrexian Awakening I decided to run just because I was doing the +1/+1 counter synergies and having a good majority of the deck. There's a handful of like incidental Phyrexians, so with them being the case, I would be able to swing in with them and then activate their abilities and things of that nature. That's why I decided to run that. The Chomping Kevu is a little underwhelming at first, but the fact that you're able to get through and not be blocked by creatures with a power 2 or less prevents the chump blocking, so it's actually something I really enjoy. Effectively a 4 mana 4/4 with that ability, or just 4 mana make your biggest dude unable to be blocked and get in there. Renata was just one of those fun +1/+1 counter synergies that just happened to work with the deck, and it was just incidental. I actually had a game where I turn 2 played the Ozolith, turn 3 played the Spirit, turn 4 played Renata, and just every time I played a dude, it was just bigger dudes, and they're like, oh, holy crap. Unfortunately on my part, luckily for my opponent's part, they played a Wrath spell that dealt 3 damage right before all my creatures got too big, and so they were able to stop it. But if they did not have the answer, they would have just got rolled. Storm the Seed Core. Number one, first off, the art looks bloody amazing. I'm a big fan of just the way that it looks. And then the fact that it allows you to distribute the 4 +1/+1 counters up to 4 target creatures. It doesn't say they have to be 4 different target creatures, so you essentially can give one creature all 4 +1/+1 counters. But it allows your entire team to swing in with Vigilance. And the +1/+1 counter synergies. Just an insane pump spell I really liked. The Invasion of Zendikar is an actual solid battle. I mean, it's effectively explosive vegetation or things of that nature. The 4 mana go grab 2 basic lands with the upside of turning into a, I'll go ahead and just show the other side now, turning into a 4/4 Vigilant Haste land that generates mana of any color. I mean, and it's a 4/4? Yeah, it's a 4/4. So yeah, it's land ramp, mana fixing, just a pretty decent battle. One of my favorite ones personally. Deadly Decision was just a derision. Derision. Wow, I've been saying decision all weekend. But Deadly Derision was an amazing kill spell that allows you to generate a treasure, which is strong. One of my favorite battles, actually, this Invasion of Ilgrotha. is a pretty strong. The fact that you're allowed to essentially hit anything for 3 and gain 3 is pretty incremental. And the fact that the back is a flying 3/3 that whenever an opponent controlled dies, it gets a +1/+1 counter and you gain a life. With all the goofy +1/+1 synergies and the fact that that one life gain, that's actually pretty incremental, actually helped me to survive multiple games because I was able to get it flipped over. So there's that. One of my favorite of the basic land cyclers, just a 6 mana 6/5 reach trample, and if you just happen to be behind in lands, go ahead and forest cycle. Go do that forest. And then the Gloomfang Mauler, which normally I would probably not run myself, but the fact that this was a weird backup synergy +1/+1 counter deck, I decided to run the Mauler to give that backup effect. So there's that. Land base, I don't usually go down into the land base, but for these specifically, I ran 2 planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 forests, and then 4 swamps. My math could be wrong, and I'm sure if you guys feel the need to break that down, go ahead and tear me apart in the comments. As the way I do my math is very unique, I believe. And just the fact that the majority of my deck was green with just a little bit of black and then a couple splash for white, that's the reason I made this particular deck that particular way. And so that was the first deck. And I felt, at least the 2 Ozoliths I know came in from one pool. I forget what all came together from each pool specifically, but I know the 2 Ozoliths were in one. Like I happened to open one, open another pack, and then open the second one after 2 packs after the first one. It was just insane. So I'm like doing something with +1/+1 counters in green. It was just absurd. The second deck, this one took me a little bit more time. I will admit I did agonize over it a little bit more than the other. Myself personally, I'm a big time aggro player. And a lot of my friends actually have noticed that I play Abzan colors a lot for some reason. I didn't really notice until someone pointed it out, and now that it's been pointed out, I kind of have some conscious to it now. And so any other color combinations, I mean, I can play blue. I bloody hate playing blue, but I can play blue. And so I decided to go Izzet with this particular deck, and just because the control aspect of it was actually, I felt was pretty strong. Rona, if nothing else, Rona, the front side, the fact that it allows you to loot is pretty decent. It's a 2 mana 1/3, which is not too bad. The backside, I never really got the backside to go off, but the fact that it becomes a 5/5 trampler is pretty decent. Allowing you to essentially steal a card from your opponent's hand and play it depending on if they hit it. I mean, yeah, it's there, but I'm really using that for the front effect just to loot. And got ourselves a 2 mana 1/3. This particular one is just another card to loot and as needed, and then also to essentially return stuff from the deck or from the graveyard back to the deck. Got ourselves a flying 2/1, just a decent 2 mana body for flying on the off chance I had flying opponent stuff. And then I believe this is the essentially Coiling Oracle on the back whenever you transform it. So it's pretty decent land ramp as well whenever you really need it. Got ourselves the 2 mana 2/1 Devil. I really like this particular card. Even if you don't splash the black, just to transform it, you can pay. The fact that you can always pay the Phyrexian 2 life is predominantly what I would be doing with it. But the fact becomes a 3/2 that makes your opponent sack either a artifact or a creature, allows you to essentially just get 2 for 1 most of your opponent's things, which is a pretty strong creature, I feel. This particular burn spell, I'm a big fan. Oh, put down all the lands. I really like this particular burn spell, the fact that it's 3 damage at instant speed that hits pretty much any target except for a player, and allows you to not rummage because you're not discarding it, you're shipping it to the bottom and then redrawing. It's actually, I feel, is pretty strong. This is actually really decent sorcery spell to make some creatures, especially with the number of convoke things that are in red and blue. Especially in this particular deck, it actually helped me to accelerate and convoke some pretty gross things into play. So there's that. Negate is pretty standard. I mean, just stop that non-creature spell. I was able to stop a couple planeswalkers with this, and it's just strong. Looting effect with this, or not looting, rummaging, I guess. It's Thrill of Possibilities, but on the battle. So it allows you to discard a card and draw 2 cards. And then the backside, I never really got to the back. Oh no, I did get to the backside. And the fact that it allows you to essentially create 2 1/1s for the... effectively, you're making 4 power with just the 2 creatures, by discarding a card. And then whenever I got to the late game, I actually did make like 4/1 tokens with this, which was actually pretty crazy, especially because I just kept on top decking lands, so I kept shipping the lands and making creatures instead. I really like the cycle of cards. This has this is the counter spell, but if your opponent just happens to pay the 4 mana, you still incubate 2. So it's either counter the creature or battle or incubate 2. So I like it. It's actually pretty strong, I feel. A Moment of Truth is one of those cards I really enjoy. The fact that it's at instant speed is really nice. It gives you that flexibility of being able to grab a card to your hand, putting a card to the bottom, and putting a card into the graveyard, allowing you to effectively. There are some graveyard synergies. They're not too many, but this is pretty strong, I feel. And the fact that I got 2 of them did help to kind of get to the things I would need to control and help us just control the board. Another one of those rummage effects, and the fact that if you did not realize, I initially thought backup was only for your creatures, but it does say put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, so you can target any creature on the board, give it that +1/+1 counter, and give it that ability until end of turn. So this did not happen in the previous game or any of the games, but I could have given the +1/+1 counter to this deck or any of the creatures here so that I could accelerate and get discard and rummage as needed. This card I think is nuts. It's a 3 mana 2/2 flying vigilance, so it's already value wise. It's a solid creature to get in the air with evasion, and it has the upside of tap it, make a 2/2 white and blue knight creature with token with vigilance, and you only have to cast 2 spells to do it. Yeah, I got this off pretty much every other game. It was insane, and it allowed this deck to pretty much just get ahead because it was constantly casting spells. Videlian, the Thrill Seeker, I really like this card. The fact that it's back up 2 and it's the goofy combo with Yargle and Multani. Unfortunately, I did not get him in this particular deck because I had the correct colors. I just didn't have the card. But it does allow me to essentially, like, depending on how to do the math, I could be like, oh, let me give this 6/5 the +2/+2 tokens, but because of the Ozolith, it'll be an actually +3/+3, I believe. I had to read the cards to be 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And then after swinging in, if it didn't kill him that way, I'll just sack him and deal another 8 minimum more damage. Insane. It was just a fun combination between the two. Searing Barbs, this particular card's growing on me. I like the fact that you do still get a creature, or you still incubate 1 after the fact, and the creature cannot block. So I typically use it to kill most things, but every once in a while there was a time that I needed to get through, so I'm like, oh, I'll stop that from blocking, get through with everybody. It's pretty insane. This is one of those really fun bounce spells that essentially cost 3 whenever you cast it any other time outside of combat, but during your opponent's turn, if they swing in, pay 1, bounce the thing, and surveil 2. A really strong blue control spell, I feel like. This particular one is a little goofy. The fact that it incubates 3 and then draws a card, essentially for 3 mana. Yeah, I really like this card a lot, especially in the control aspect, because it allows you to create a dude to protect yourself and replaces itself. And yeah, I like that card a lot. This particular battle is one of my favorites. 3 mana, deal 4 damage to either a player or battle. So you're guaranteed to hit something of relevance, and you can hit 1 damage to any target creature. And then also the fact that it's prowess and essentially a Torburn effect on a creature. It's pretty solid. I feel like this is a really good battle, especially for red decks that like to do burn. Got ourselves the Onaik Javenier. The fact that it can hit either players or battles is actually pretty solid, just keeping this on the defensive every time, and then only swinging in for that 5 when it's completely guaranteed the hit in. But the fact that it has reach stops those evasion and allows you to essentially ping off your opponents. This was that turn, the 5 mana turn 4 play that I played, and this was insane. I never actually flipped this card over for the other side. I purely used it because it's a 5 mana 5/5 body with Ward 2, and the fact that pretty much every time I casted spells in this deck that was not creatures, I would draw a card. Like a good majority of the spells in the deck. Let's see. These are all creatures. Pretty much all these and then some were all 3 mana value or higher. And like even this particular one, the as far as dispersal, even though you cast it for the 1 mana, it's still a 3 mana value spell. So whenever you cast this, it would still check, and then Jin Kataxis would actually still draw you that card, which is pretty fun. Got ourselves our 4 mana battle here that does a Wrath, dealing 3 damage to each creature. This is actually pretty strong, and then the fact that the other side is stupid, I feel. The fact that it says whenever you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So in the two-headed giant event, this was dealing 4 damage every time I cast a spell. Insane, pretty powerful. Temporal Cleansing is another one of those cards I really liked with Jin Kataxis. Essentially, I'm able to convoke with all my little, either my 1/1s or my token-generated creatures, and then essentially get rid of one of their bigger threats. Chandra, Hope's Beacon was one of the reasons I went red, because this card is just nuts. I mean, especially with any of the control effects, any of the bounce, any of the creating tokens, any of the burn, it pretty much doubled it, except for the battles, which there's only like 2 of them, and the fact that I'm able to just use the -X and burn off 2 targets, and it copies things statically. It's a really strong Planeswalker. And then City on Fire was just one of those finisher cards that I ran in the deck, because if I'm able to convoke this out with all my tokens and all the incubated things that it created, I actually would have killed my opponents. And I actually did not. I had a bunch of incubated tokens on the board, and even my opponent noted, I was like, hey, why didn't you transform any of them? It's because I planned to wrath the board, play this, and then swing in for game. And actually that was the game that I conceded, because early on in the game, I put this card onto the bottom of it because of the 2-mana spell, because I was not going to cast it anytime soon. And with the game going to the point that it did, I was able to get pretty close to the bottom because of Chandra's +1 ability. I knew that this card was at near the bottom of my deck, and so with that being the case, I knew I generated a bunch of tokens on this side, even though this particular deck was actually mana screwed, and I was about to get in with it, but things happen, and it is what it is. And yeah, that's my first 2 sealed pool decks that I actually broke down for everyone. Here is a couple codes as well for everybody. Here's the first one. So go ahead for whoever, if you weren't able to attend the event and you need a code, there you go. And here's another one. From my understanding, you can't claim more than 1 of these anyway, so there's no point. I have, I don't know, like 13 of these, I think, something like that. And so more power to whoever gets it. Oh, and I didn't bring down the lands. Got 1 of the gain life lands that actually fit in this deck, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was 8 mountains and 7 islands. The reason I broke that down, I believe I had more double red pips than I did double blue. So, and that's why I did that. And then most of the deck was pretty much straight down the middle. And yeah, that is my two-headed giant decks from the one event. I do have about, I think, 5 more decks that I'm going to break down. I don't know how many videos those will be, but I want to try and break them down as quickly as I can. Thank you so much again, everyone, for watching the video. If you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking the time. If there's anything that you saw that you would have done differently, let me know. Honestly, I would have tried to get all the pools set aside as well, but after the event was pretty much, after sorting through things, I didn't keep all the pools separated. So unfortunately, I got a majority of those all mixed up, but at least I know I had these 2 decks separated, and that's how I was able to go down with this. And then there's the other draft decks that I do have. I have one that's still sleeved up, so I know for a fact that was the deck that I ran. And for the other 4, it's kind of like, I'm pretty close to sure that that's how the decks were run. But I'll admit, that particular weekend is already a foggy haze. It hasn't been a full 7 days just yet since then, but I'm still, like, it was a surreal experience, that's for sure. But once again, thank you everyone for sticking around to the end of the video. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. Do take the time to like, comment, share, subscribe, and if you haven't already done so, really appreciate it. Never forget, Senpai didn't notice. Good night.